So for those of you who perhaps don't know, the Herefordshire Green Network, who are hosting this event this evening, have been going for over 10 years now, and we are a network that's made up of local green and environmental and transition groups, activists, environmental organisations and businesses, local community groups, town and parish councils, as well as interested individuals. We have a weekly newsletter that goes out at 5 o'clock on a Friday. It lands in your inbox, as well as member gatherings where we all sort of get together, share our news and network really, as well as workshops. And these themed workshops can be found on our YouTube channel. Since COVID hit, we've been recording all of these and they're freely there for everybody to have a little look at. And all of this is basically to aid our role as a hub for resources and sharing in Herefordshire. We have an incredible volunteer steering group and an administrator who is paid for 1 day a week. So we've got quite good infrastructure in place. And HGN have a couple of projects that we run at the moment. And one of them is called Building Sense, Creating Comfort and Cutting Carbon. And that is an initiative which seeks to bring together people to provide information and professional expertise to help with the challenge of making your homes and your workplaces comfortable year round, obviously cutting carbon emissions, and very much in the face of some very high heating bills at the moment. So that's one of our projects. And the second project is this one. It is the Great Collaboration. And as many of you may already know, we started off the Great Collaboration running zero carbon focused workshops across Herefordshire, beginning to engage with the full range of local governance. And then from that, during the COVID period of lockdown, we ran themed workshops. So things like flood management, putting the right tree in the right place, the impact carbon calculator tool. And all of those again are on our YouTube channel. So feel free to have a little look. And I'm here this evening to try and explain to you and talk you through and show you some of the latest developments. The first round of funding that we got from MCS really was to produce a proof of concept. And we did that. We proved that the concept worked, and our website has been used by environment groups and local councils across Herefordshire. And the next part that we've been working on, I think, is summarised quite nicely with a quote. So Chris at DM Labs, an IT company who have just done some absolutely amazing work for us. And he said, the DM Lab were tasked with taking the Great Collaboration website and integrating it into content management system to help with ease of use. In this case, it was WordPress. The previous website had been built well using very good coding techniques. And the challenge was how to take this bespoke functionality and build it into a pre-built CMS, improving both the look and the functionality of the website, as well as maintaining the already achieved data. The DM Lab used both front-end designers and back-end developers to build a new system, and it's met the first phase of development. It has now the capacity to both be scaled and to be user-friendly at the same time. And something that Chris didn't mention in that quotation was that it was really hard. He said that I don't know, this really does make me laugh for some reason, but he said that it is the hardest project that he's had in his career. And I feel quite proud about that, to be honest with you. So what we now have is a website that I'm really proud of, and it has definitely been a massive group effort, and a lot of volunteer time has gone into this as well. So this evening, I'd like to talk you through a typical journey of a local council or an environment group, so that hopefully you guys here can see the potential for this toolkit in your community. So I'm going to try and do a little screen share. Okay, Nick, I can see you. Can you give me a thumbs up if that's all right? Fabulous. So if you don't know, my name's Beth and I am the coordinator for the Great Collaboration. I'm going to be talking probably now until around about 7ish, I expect, maybe just before. We'll have a few questions, and then I will introduce you to Nick and the Stay Green team and their project. So I'd like to introduce you to an imaginary local environment group, the Ivington Green Environment Group. This is where I live. It doesn't exist. That snowdrop does exist though, and it's £100. And if you wanted to buy one for £300, it's called Treasure Island. So feel free. It's something that the area is quite famous for. So this environment group, this imaginary environment group, could be just a group of local people in the community who are interested in these issues. Perhaps there's one local councillor who feeds back to full council meetings, or it could be a working group within the full council. But essentially there has to be a handful of people who are driving the change and the actions in a community. And from what I've found, it's normally the same faces who are getting quite tired of this. And this project is really about engaging whole communities and bringing them together with local government, and hopefully taking some of the work out of it as well. So this is the main website that they go and have a little look at, and they go through and have a look at some of these actions and discover that they're behind the scenes. There's a lot of extra information, and perhaps one of the bits which I think is particularly useful is the what's happening locally section there, which obviously is Herefordshire centric at the moment, but that can be easily changed and altered. So they decide, you know what, we are going to sign up, we're going to give our postcode so that we can find out more information, so that we can be grouped together into our local council areas. So they sign up, they log in, and they arrive at the toolkit there with all of the actions, and they start to have a little look through. And as you can see, for each of those actions, you can click and get a lot more information about it. And you can see there that there is a CO2 rating and there is a cost rating. And a lot of these actions are behavioural changes, they're free. So here we go. That's where you can click to get a little bit more information, read through and decide, is this something that you really want to do as an individual? So you can commit, yes, I'm going to do that. You can say, no, I've already done that. And if you click not for now, then it asks you for a little bit more information. So you can say, do you know what, I can't do that right now because I need some financial help. I need more information. It's something that I couldn't do on my own, or perhaps it's not applicable to your life. And they start to go through, and I've done this just for the category of buildings. Here we go. So in my personal area now, I've logged in, I'm in my secure, safe personal area, and it shows me everything that I have committed to. So you can see here that we're aiming to get solar panels before November. So I will be switching my energy to probably a cheaper provider, but it will be renewable. I'll be getting a smart meter and all of that. I've committed to insulating, because one half of my loft, I need to build a mezzanine level to try and fit the Christmas decorations on. So that's something, one half of the house still needs to be insulated. In my personal area, it shows me some of the things that I've already done as well. And then perhaps the most useful part in terms of data collection are the actions that you can't do right now. So, you know, I can't go and buy efficiently because essentially nothing in my home is broken yet. So there's no point in buying anything new. I'm not going to make a whole building plan because I've just finished renovating a house, so that would be quite a depressing activity to do. I can't switch it to renewable gas because we're not on gas. And there at the bottom, timing is everything. I don't put my washing machine on at night time because I have 2 children under 5, and quite frankly, if I do the washing and have a shower, then I'm winning that day. So I really wanted to show you that, because the whole point of this tool is it's not judgmental, and it's not trying to create people who are purists in any way at all. It's very much up to the user. What is it? What little tweaks can you do to make some changes to your life? And quite often, you know, to become more sustainable, but quite often these actions also lead to your bills reducing and life being a little bit cheaper for you as well. So as a user, the Ivington Green Group can see everything that is happening in their local area. They can see, oh, this is meant to whiz up, but never mind. They can see the actions that people have committed to, the areas, the actions that they can't do yet, how many people in their local area are using it, how many people are engaged. And this is in the insights section of the website, and it's updated in real time. So every time somebody goes on and does something, this updates automatically, and anybody can see what's going on because it's anonymized data. You don't know whether it's Jane up the road or Joe blogs at number 3. So this is really interesting for everybody else, but the Ivington Green Group realised, well, there's only about 5 of us using this tool, which is no good. We need more people to create more robust data. You know, the data's not interesting yet. So how on earth do they get more members of the community to use this tool, to perhaps learn from it, and to provide data so that the local council and the environment group can start working together to drive larger scale change? And that's when they notice on the website that there's a little button on the top right corner there for local councils, which anybody can look at. It's all there, freely available. And they spend a lot of time there looking through the handbook that tells them everything that they need to know about this process. And that's something which I'd like to go through with you briefly now. So your residents and businesses and individuals within your local community can start using the Great Collaboration Toolkit right now. But to really get the benefits for your community, we do suggest that you follow these 4 steps: declare, plan, promote, and report. And those last 3 steps, plan, promote, and report, we suggest that you kind of review annually so that you can add new supporting actions as you complete existing ones. So for each of these, we've provided some resources, and you can see there the big green button, Open Resource Pack. That's where you'd find that. And the first one there is declare, and we have in that section a copy of a local council climate emergency declaration template that can be adjusted and adapted. It's just there to kind of cut down some of the workload. And this is really interesting for me because for some local councils, declaring a climate and ecological emergency really isn't something that they want to do. And that's a local issue, and that is very much up to them. And it doesn't mean that you can't continue to use the tool and that you can't continue to promote it within your communities. It's just a suggestion. There are other people, perhaps environment groups, who don't want to ask their local council to declare a climate emergency because they feel that it might rock the boat and they want to maintain those really important relationships. There are some local councils who have already declared a climate emergency, but actually since that moment, they haven't done a huge amount. And there are other local councils where, 50 people have turned up insisting that they declare an emergency, and those people have kind of disappeared. And I think lots of local councils that I've spoken to would really like those people to be involved in some of this. And that's part of what this tool's about, is to bring people out of the woodwork and to start these conversations. So the next section is planning. And I've just done a quick screenshot here. You'll find that all of the actions present within the Great Collaboration Toolkit are in a template, and a handful of which you can realistically expect to take meaningful action over the following year. So we suggest that, you write down in the document specific supporting actions that you would take, be really, really specific about it. And it could be, in my opinion, also a good opportunity to briefly audit and get your own house in order. So, for example, on this one here, is the local council's bank accounts and insurance companies using companies that are working to reduce their carbon emissions? That could be something that you can do before you have anybody in your community using the Great Collaboration Toolkit. And this is actually a document that I would really like to improve. And potentially this is an area that where Stay Green, who you'll hear from later on this evening, do a much better job. They've got project plans for local council actions, and that's something which you could get started on without rolling this tool out immediately. So before you're planning, but you haven't got many people using the tool yet, but you can still start. And we suggest that a really good place to start is to use the data from the Impact Community Carbon Calculator there. It's quite new, so necessarily it does make some assumptions that might not be quite right for your community. So in other words, it is possible to challenge how accurate it is, but it is also supported by the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy and the Centre for Sustainable Energy, amongst others. And it does also publish its methodology. So at the time of writing, it is the only tool that we are aware of that gives both parish and small community level information. So it does make sense to start with the results from this calculator. And in future years, you know, it might evolve and there might be something that's more appropriate. And if that's something that you'd like to know more about, we ran a workshop with Tim Yare, which is on our YouTube channel again. And he was really instrumental in some of the adaptations that were made in January, I think. So you can go on there and have a little look and learn more about that tool if you want to. So the next section that we have provided some resources for is promote. And this is the bit where we've really tried to help out as much as possible. And we're very lucky that we've got a fantastic marketing team working with us now, Firestarter, who are just getting into their stride, really, because they haven't been able to promote a website until the website is something that we're proud of. And this has been live now for a couple of days, so it is quite new still. So in that folder, you will find, and again, this is just a tiny screenshot of it, you will find environmental days, a list of upcoming national and international environment days. And these are a really great way of engaging local people because you can piggyback on the wider marketing efforts that goes into promoting them. And here you'll find both images and text on a spreadsheet. So you can just copy and paste it straight into your social media channels. We also have the Toolkit actions pictorially represented there. So you'll find text and imagery there to promote individual actions within the toolkit. And again, you can just drop these images onto your own social media channels alongside the text provided. And of course, they can be posted at any time throughout the year because, you know, they don't have specific dates. And I'm very conscious that, especially in Herefordshire, not everybody in a community is going to be online. So we also suggest things like notice boards, you know, local radio, newspapers, and also face-to-face events. And we have, again, free, obviously, we have two versions of this. We have boards, pull-up banners, a series of business cards that have got a link to the website and a QR code. And something that we found actually is that, you know, piggybacking on an existing face-to-face event, like a tea morning or something that the church might be running, or the weekend just gone, we had obviously the Jubilee celebrations. So Marden and Foundhope borrowed our 2 copies of this. And it was an opportunity to have somebody from the environment group or the council standing there and just chatting to people and having those conversations, which I just think is really, really vital. So there's another promotional tool that we've got for you there. And the last resource that we have is the reporting stage. And obviously you saw earlier when the Ivington Green Environment Group went on and logged into the website, they could see in real time all of the data coming through. But that's actually something that we really want to improve a little bit for local councils. So we're in the process of generating a report that can show the historical patterns so that you can see perhaps the impact of a face-to-face launch. You can see how many extra users are engaged after that event. And therefore that information being that much more detailed can be used to define policy and action. So the whole point really is to review the plan every single year to make it a regular agenda item at full councils, so that each year you can add new supporting actions as you complete your existing ones. So, oh, I'm doing well. Okay, that's all right for time. Good, good. So essentially, this is kind of everything that we have so far, which I've very briefly gone over for you. And this website's been live now, I think, for about 3 or 4 days. So there will be tweaks throughout, most certainly. I think that's probably about all the information we can cope with for now. But in terms of our plans for the future, you might have seen that we've started to use MailChimp correspondence, hopefully not in an irritating way. Nobody wants them landing in their inbox constantly, but engaging with the people using the tool is really, really important to us. We've also started working and talking to schools in the local area because that's another community group where you have the members of staff and so many extended families that can be reached through that community. So we've started to produce a schools pack as well with, assemblies, tutor time activities, information to go into parent mail, and obviously the welcome screens as you come into school, so that teachers can start to give students who, especially students who perhaps are anxious about this, these are really practical tips to hopefully make everybody feel that there are the things that they can change in their own lives. And there are obviously some challenges for the future as well, in terms of, especially in Herefordshire, these multiple group parishes. If Jim's here, he'll be asking me, I'm sure, if we've solved that problem yet. There are some unparished areas as well. So that's something that we're working with. And of course, there are clerks out there who work with multiple parishes. So we want to ensure that all of these little tweaks can be resolved so that everything runs smoothly in the future. So this is our toolkit, and I'm afraid I had to do it in a PowerPoint presentation because I live in Ivington, as you now know, and there's no internet signal here at all. So if I ask my computer to do anything else, it might have a nervous breakdown. So I do hope that you get a feel for what the website looks like, and that maybe today you can go in, have a little tomorrow, have a little look, log in and play with it at your leisure. So I finished just before 7, which is perfect. I think this would be a really good opportunity for people to ask questions specifically about this tool, and then we can move on and I'll introduce Nick from Stay Green. So feel free, you can put them in the chat if you want, but it would be nice to have a conversation. Is there anybody who just wants to unmute? Because there's so many screens here, I might not be able to see everybody, or you can put a little yellow hand up.
Beth, can I ask?
Tony, hello.
Hi, and well done. That looks fabulous. Sorry, I've got a feedback here. Can I just ask, is this available on the Great Collaboration website? Is that?
It's the same website. Nothing about the URL has changed at all. So you can go on, and the data, if you're an old user, the data has now migrated across. So you'll just hopefully have a much nicer experience when you're investigating the toolkit.
Brilliant. Well done.
Lovely. Adrian, I can see your hand.
Yes, sorry, I don't know how to access the yellow hand.
That's okay. A pink one will do.
Thank you very much. It's we've been on this for a few months in Llangowren, as you know, and it's difficult to get people to sign up for it. So I think the schools angle would be very, very useful to us. Can I just ask what is the greater relationship with the county council over greener footprints, etc.?
So greener footprints, if you go into the section, the theme that is use your voice, greener footprints is one of those actions. So in Herefordshire, for those of you who perhaps aren't from Herefordshire, it's a county council initiative where people make a pledge and tell the council, what is it that they plan to do to become more sustainable. So we've added that as one of our actions, and I would say that there's a partnership there, but we're completely free to do our own things. We're not restricted by each other in any way. We're both kind of promoting each other, and we both see that we're great initiatives, but we're not restricted. We can do what we want. Does that help you out, Adrian? Does that make sense? Good. You'll see it on there if you go and have a little look, the little Greener Footprints logo. Is there any other questions there? Oh, Rod, hello. I would unmute you, Rod, but there's so many people here, I can't see where you are.
Sorry about that. I needed
That's
to go
okay.
to the screen. All I was going to ask was, it was an extension really to the last question. In terms of Herefordshire hitting their targets for climate change and biodiversity,
Yeah.
how exactly does the Great Collaboration link into that? Is it formal? Is it informal?
There's nothing formal about it, to be honest with you. We aren't tied by any kind of obligation to the county council. If we can help in any way with them achieving what they need to achieve, then brilliant. That's really, really great. But we don't have any kind of obligation to them, Rods. They're not going to come knocking on our door and say, hey, you said you could give us 20% reduction in X, Y, and Z. Does that answer your question at all?
It's more about how it links through Herefordshire Council, parish councils.
Oh, I see.
Collaboration, and it's how it all fits together.
So when you look at the insights section of the tool, with your postcode, you can see your local council, your parish council, and you can also see your county council results. There are two options. So you get, I think, quite a nice overview of that as well. So as an individual, you can see that, or a local councillor, or an environment group. So we've split it into those two sections. So obviously, if this tool was to go to Shropshire, it would default to Shropshire County Council and specifically to an individual's local council.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I'm struck. Since you've migrated, I haven't been able to get onto I can get onto the general website, but I can't log in, and it doesn't seem to recognise my password.
You may well have to reset your password. I think that from what I understand about IT, which is very little, but from what I understand, with any site, if you change it, I think for security reasons, everyone needs to just reset. So, I mean, that shouldn't hopefully take you very long. It's just a case of changing your password to make everything really secure.
Yeah, the only problem is that it doesn't seem to recognise my email address. Anyway, I'll pick up with that with you separately.
Definitely do that, because those are issues that now we have an actual IT team. They can solve them for us, which is wonderful.
Okay, thanks.
No problem at all. I'm just going to zoom around. If I don't see you, feel free to unmute. Oh, Cara. Hi, Cara.
Hello, good evening. Really impressive, wonderful website you've created and tool.
Thank you.
As you can see, I'm actually based down in South Somerset, and I just wondered, how would other areas of the country with community groups like yours try and engage with the council be able to adopt your wonderful website and toolkit?
So you can completely start using it now. We've got people in Norfolk and places where we really haven't promoted it. I don't really understand how they heard about it, but it's great. So you can start using it now. The only thing that won't happen is the what's happening locally section. Obviously,
that's the bit I think we're most interested in, is use that data.
So so the data will work for you. You'll still get all the graphs and everything, the postcodes, all of that. You'll be able to see local parishes and your county council as well. But the what's happening locally information, because Shropshire, the county over, are very interested in using this as well. And what we've decided to do is to have a named person who is the contact person for Shropshire. Because obviously if people across the country are using this, they're not all going to come to me. So each county needs a named person to look after their kind of residents, their communities. And what Shropshire are hoping to do, because they've got people with such local knowledge and transition town movements and the South Shropshire Climate Action Group, they are going to fill in for each of those themes, buildings, transport, waste. They're going to fill in the what's happening locally, and that named person will just every 6 months double check that it's up to date. The only technical thing we need to figure out is how that person logs in to change just that section, but not change anything else on the website. So I suggest what we do is, when I'm able to pay a bit more attention to the chat, I will put my email address in there. so that we can have contact and get that rolling. I think that's probably all you're going to need, actually, is my email address, and then we can continue the conversation, Cara.
Thanks, Beth. That's really helpful.
Great. Frank.
Hi, thanks very much indeed for that, Beth. In Scotland, where we have local authorities and community councils, is there any sort of plans for parity that the IT guys can sort that out, so when we put our postcodes in?
So I don't know the plugin or whatever it is that they use that gives this information and groups postcodes to the right parish and county council. I don't know whether that works in Scotland, but that's relatively easy to figure out. And if it doesn't, there will be a plugin for Scotland, most definitely. And I know that, is it Stirling you're from, Frank?
Yeah.
Yes, so you may well wish to have a conversation with Nick, Stay Green, because I think he's been talking to the Scottish government and lots of local councils there as well. But it's a case of a plug-in essentially, which I don't think would be an issue. So if that's something that you guys are interested in rolling out, I can ask the question and try and make it happen.
Thanks very much.
Lovely. Lewis or Louis?
Thanks for the presentation, Beth. Very interesting. Are you linking into the business community at all with this in terms of promotion? Because clearly one of the problems we've got, it's not just businesses but developers. If we're going to make a real difference in terms of impact, it's not just ourselves as individuals and ourselves as councillors making changes. It's the impact of economic activity that's causing quite a lot of the issue as well. And I don't know how we're going to encourage perhaps the larger businesses and some of the business associations, some of the developers, to perhaps pick up in this toolkit in a more general way and see whether that could inspire them to do things differently when they're actually involved in that economic activity. I don't know what your thoughts are, whether that's completely left field of where you come from.
No, it's not completely off the mark at all. It's definitely on our radar. We're quite lucky in Herefordshire that we've got quite a few links to the Business Futures Forum, and Firestarter, our marketing team, have lots of links to businesses. So I feel like within Herefordshire, that's something that we can test as a model, because we've got these wonderful links, similarly to how we are with schools as well. But it's definitely, it's not out of scope, it's just round the corner. So I feel like that's something that I'd really like to get into businesses. I feel like that's something we could do in Herefordshire, because we know the people, we can have those conversations and make it happen. And it's definitely something we need to trial first before, running into businesses halfway across the country. I mean, so do you work in business, Lewis?
No, I'm just a local councillor. I'm also thinking of the farming community, areas like that as well. Because if we're going to get to net zero across the county, then every section of the county and whatever activity they're involved in is going to actually have to contribute.
Yeah, you're completely right.
And that's the issue for us.
And that's why, I mean, we've worked closely as well with the diocese here in Hereford. So I'm very aware that between, the council, the church, individuals, businesses, schools, this is really, that's why we call it the great collaboration. This is really about trying to bring all of those people together. So yeah, business is definitely on our radar, but just one foot in front of the other. David.
Thanks, really, really good. And I've just sent out the link to all my parishes in the south. Is there any leaflets that you have that I've been online, I've seen what you've got, and I've just sent the link, but I haven't. It'd be nice if I could send pictures out to them. A leaflet type thing. Is there anything that's available? Also, you've got all the talk community hubs that most of my parishes have those now too. So it would be great to get those involved. So,
yes, we did. We did so much work with Talk Community when we did the proof of concept. So it would be really great to pick that up again, because the Herefordshire Green Network have got some wonderful connections there. In terms of leaflets, we've got kind of press release and one pages and things like that.
Well, for example,
I agree with you. I think that's something that we need to add to our promotion folder, definitely.
an email that we could share, or a leaflet that we could share. Like, I've just sent it out to my parishes, but it would have been easier if I could just share something with them, and also share with the different groups, community groups in the area.
Yeah.
We have links to many of them. So if there was something that was easily shareable, it would be great. And also things to share to Facebook. You know, if it's just share, that's what we need.
So
and just make it easy, that's all.
So under the promotion section, where it's got open, you know, when you go into the local council section, and you can click the green button, open resources, in there is everything you could possibly want for social media, everything, text, images.
So it could be shared automatically then.
Yes, all you do,
Great.
copy paste, done. I mean, it's going to be less than 15 minutes a week, which is really, you know, if you're doing it really regularly. But I do agree with you that although we have one pages and press releases which are useful, I do think actually a leaflet is something that, you know, a familiar format to people. So thank you, David. I think that's something that we'll definitely do moving forward.
Thank you.
Brilliant. I'm just going to skim across and see if I can spot any yellow hands or anything. Okay, I'm very aware that people are putting things in the chat and I haven't been able to have a look at it, but I will do in a moment. But first of all, I would love to introduce you to Nick. I don't know if John's on the call as well, from Stay Green. And this is a project, and Nick's a research fellow at the Warwick Business School, as well as a parish councillor. And this is a really fascinating project that I'm excited to hear more about. So Nick, are you there? Are you ready to share your screen?
I am. Super. And thank you very much for the very kind introduction. And hopefully if I, hold on.
And I hope that yours can go through, unlike mine.
Yeah, there we go.
Presentation mode.
It's always the IT that's the problem, isn't it?
Oh, I know. It's all right, we've got a team now, it's fine.
Yeah, it makes life a lot easier. Here we go, right. There we are. So if I share that, and then there we go. Has that come through okay?
Yes, I can see that.
Excellent. Right, well, thank you very much, Beth. This is Stay Green. This is a project designed to help parish and town councils identify and implement sustainable actions. It's me and John at the moment, but we have had a variety of other researchers along the way. I think we peaked at about 14 of us earlier this year. So really tonight's about showing you what we've got so far, and really getting your feedback on it. The website has just gone live. It will be ready to start playing with next week. So feel free to do that. And there's a contact box on the website and all that will come directly to me if you do have any comments. So who are we? So this is a project that I created getting on for 2 years ago now. Because I'm a parish councillor in Long Itchington, which for those of you who don't know is about 10 miles east of Coventry. The chair of our parish council knew what I do for work and said we could do with a climate change policy. So we started having a little bit of a look around, discovered that there really wasn't much out there at all. And it went from there, really. The work that I do at the business school, it mainly looks at the future of energy in the UK. We're also looking specifically at the university and how we can become more sustainable. The aim is to be net zero by 2030, which we're discovering is quite a stretch. But there are some really easy wins out there. And I think a lot of the work that both us and the Great Collaboration are doing is helping people find those really easy wins. As well as that, I just worked out that it's about 25 years since I first started pestering local politicians about making our communities more sustainable, whether it be transport, leisure, the environment, generally just badgering people, running for office and doing whatever I could. That wasn't particularly successful, so I started this instead. And then John is my number 2. He's been with me pretty much since the start now. He works for us at the University of Warwick, so he's working with our project and a number of others to try and get sustainability into the local community. So looking at what we're doing at the university, what we're doing on this project, helping us speak to the councils, to businesses, to other local groups, and just help them on their path, really. He's also a coordinator for Extinction Rebellion Global, and I'm sure John can tell you more about that later. And at the bottom of the screen, you'll also see our web address. So that'll be on every slide. So if you want to note that down, that's just where you need to go to start having a play with the website. So what are we aiming to do? So the easiest way to break down our website is into these 4 points, really. We want to help people better understand sustainability. So whether that's through short documents, links to videos, training, help people understand what they're trying to achieve before they start down the pathway. Then we view sustainability very much as a project management issue. So what we do is we help people identify sustainable actions so that they see the full variety of things that are available to them. The website's going to have about 84 different actions on it once that section goes live. And we then have a project management element which helps people to progress these actions forward. And then once they've done that, we're hoping that they'll spread the word in the local community as well. So this is the center of our website. This is how it started. And this is the easiest way to show you what we're trying to achieve, really. So this is a very simple matrix. And when we first showed this to Beth and Jackie, we had a very good laugh because the two projects had been working completely independently, but we'd come up with pretty much all of the same sectors down the left-hand side. So these relate to things that parish and town councils can look at, and potentially different working groups or committees that they might have. And then across the top, we've got the 3 scopes. So this helps councils to understand what level of involvement will be required. So scope 1 is doing. These are the things that parish councils can do by themselves. Scope 2 is about choosing. So this is a lot more about procurement and your suppliers. So the things that you purchase or that you might request goes in contracts. And then scope 3 is about encouraging. So these are things that you can do with the local community and local partners to help them improve what they're doing. On here, you'll see a range of different actions. One of the things that I was very clear that I wanted to do from the start was to be able to produce a sheet of A4 that you could see the actions on, and then that you would be able to put on your website as a parish and town council. And this is where the colour codes come in. So the first page that you'll be able to see on the website will be one which just lists all of these actions and breaks them down into sectors. And then a later element that's coming is the project management part of it. So in a similar way to the Great Collaboration, you can pick the tasks that you want to do, and you can colour code them on your parish, town or community council website. So you can say that something's completed or will be ongoing, which would be green. Something's in progress, so you're working on it at the moment, which would be yellow. And then the salmon pink ones on the spreadsheet are things that are identified for action but that you can't do at the moment. So again, this is a way of showing your local community what you are doing, but also what you want to do, and to try and encourage them to get involved in the things that you can't do at the moment, to either get you the money or the person power to allow that to happen. So these individual actions are then supported by information sheets. So here are some examples from our Excel sheets that sit behind the website. These are 3 examples. And here's the sort of information that you could expect to see when you click on one. So it'll tell you what it is in layman's terms, then why you should do it, but also things to watch out for. So potential pitfalls of the project, or things that you should be really careful of when you're at the planning stage. It gives you ideal combination projects, so you're not doing 4 or 5 retrofits on the community centre. You can try and bundle it all together in one. Try and make it as quick, as easy and as cheap as possible. It gives you the co-benefits, so whether they be economic, environmental, health, things that allow you to explain to your local community why you should take on that particular project. Then there's further information. So this is where you can go to find the very hard factual information about those projects, how they're run, how they work. And then we've got financial assistance and consultancy services. So these are people that will either be able to help you with money, be it grants or financing for the project, and potentially give you bespoke help as well. So if there are local consultants who might be able to advise you on a solar project, but that you know won't be selling you anything. Then at the bottom, we've got the case studies. So these are things where you can see what other communities or businesses have done, and you can get a slightly more nuanced view of how they found the project, and a more personal view of things that you should maybe look out for when undertaking the project. And what you'll see here is that a lot of the content which backs up the website isn't written by us. And that was a very deliberate decision very early on, because whilst we found there wasn't a lot for parish and town councils, there was a lot of information out there, just in different places. So really, this is about trying to find the best information and pull it all together into one place for you, so that when you go on the website, you can see what the potential things are that you could be doing. Then when you decide that you want to undertake a project or consider it more fully, you can go and look at the best information that's available, just to try and make life as easy as possible for you, really. And again, it's also meant that other groups are happy to promote what we're doing. It gives us the chance to promote what they're doing as well. It's not creating unnecessary competition, because that's something that we really wanted to avoid. And then the 4 key elements of the website, once we've got it finished, again, quite similar to what you've got on the Great Collaboration, but this is more specifically aimed at parish councils. So templates and explainers, giving people the key terms, the basic things that they need to know. Then there's a training pathway for councillors and clerks. So again, signposting people to the best training for their specific needs. There's the information matrix, which is what I've just shown you, which is the thing that's backed up by the information sheets. And then there'll be the project management portal. So this is where you create your own specific matrix for your council that you can post on your website. And the website is up in basic form at the moment, and the first draft of the matrix will be going up either later this week or early next week. And that's where we are at the moment. So any questions?
Oh, thank you so much, Nick. I think that's a really great overview, and I'm excited to go and have a little look. So early next week, things are going to start happening bit by bit. Well done.
Thank you. It's taken a while to get there, but we've made it finally.
Yeah, it's a hard slog at the beginning, isn't it? But it's going to happen. Yeah. Brilliant. So I suppose you're more than capable of taking questions. I'll just mute myself and let people ask away.
Fiona.
Hello, yes, thank you. I was just wondering if you'd piloted using this with either your parish council or someone else's.
Yeah, so when we were building it, we've worked with a few local councils. So Kenilworth and Long Itchington have been the main two. So we've got a a slightly larger town council, and then Long Hitchington's got 3,000 residents. So that puts us in the sort of medium to large parish council bracket. Again, something that was briefly mentioned earlier is that we've also been talking to the Scottish Government about running it with community councils. I'm aware that the offering that will be needed in Scotland will be slightly different because community councils have got less by way of funds, but again have got all of the links to the local communities that we've got in England that we're trying to leverage through this tool. Also probably worth mentioning, we've spoken to Coventry and Warwickshire councils as well, and they were very keen to use it as a way to perhaps better communicate with the local councils. So we've started using what we've got. We've also spoken to higher tier councils, and they're happy with what we are putting together, and potentially using it to try and work both with parish councils as a means of offering help, but also potentially creating local networks as well, which obviously, as you've seen in Herefordshire, if you can get people together and talking, it can make some of these big tasks a lot easier. I'm aware there have been a few bits going on in the chat that I haven't had a chance to read yet. John, is there anything in there that is worth mentioning to everyone?
Yeah, can you hear me firstly?
Yep.
There we
Perfect.
go. Very good. Yeah, it was a kind of a point from Grant, I think, on the presentation, regarding our use of scope 1, 2, and 3 as categories for the matrix. And Grant has come back and said that scope 3 is supply chain procurement. I don't think these are things which are cast iron. It was just a way for us to visualize a way in which all of these different actions that we were mapping that councillors could take fit into, vague categories of what can the town or parish council do, what is under their direct control. Scope 2, what can they choose, what can they make decisions about, but they can't necessarily do something about directly. And scope 3 being what can they encourage others to do. So it was a slightly zoomed out approach to those kind of scope 1 and 2 categories that you're familiar with, Grant. So it's an adaptation of it, and it's also not something which we're pressing as our key metrics on the website. I think from our point of view, it was more something which was just useful in terms of setting out how that matrix looked and categorizing the actions into something which was user friendly, I think.
Yes, yeah, I think that's probably a good point to pick up on there, that we did have to play a little bit fast and loose with the 3 scopes there in terms of relating it to actions in a sensible way so that we could try and divide them out a bit more. So yes, good spot. And that's why. I hope that helps. Cara.
Thanks. Yeah, it looks really interesting. I just can't quite understand what it's visually going to look like. You haven't got a sort of screen share that you could show of what the website will be, or do I have to wait for it to be launched?
Probably the best thing to do is to wait for it to be launched, just because the stuff that we've got at the moment was fairly early stage. So it actually looks very, very similar to the Great Collaboration website, which was, again, one of the things that we made us laugh when we pulled up our initial screenshots of what the website was going to look like in our first meeting with Beth and Jackie. That again, we'd got tiles, we'd got them split into the 3 scopes once they were divided into sectors. And once you click on them, it takes you through to a larger but similar page to what you get on the Great Collaboration. And again, that was all done completely independently, but it just seems like that's the best way to display it. So if you're familiar with the Great Collaboration website, you shouldn't find it too different to that.
I've just sent through in the chat, there's a screenshot there, which is from the first iteration of the website that we did, which should hopefully give you an idea of the way it will look visually. It's going to change obviously slightly, but you can see the way there's caterpillar. It's in the Zoom chat. You should be able to see it.
And then just one last question as well about because it's mentioned scopes 1, 2 and 3, whether it will link to a carbon calculator for local authorities. I don't know if you come across the LGA one that's offered for free to support councils working out their own carbon footprint or to reach carbon neutrality.
John, is that one that we link to? Because I know that we have used the Exeter tool as well. Which is the same one that the Great Collaboration uses in terms of looking at the footprint for different parishes.
Oh, that's the impact tool.
Yes, sorry, yeah, the impact one that's produced by Exeter. Yep.
Yeah, so that's kind of looking at general emissions that the bays utilise each year from general emissions that then has a snapshot down into more local areas. But there's also the Local Government Association, I think. There's so many of these acronyms on there, who have produced a free spreadsheet which enables councils to input all their own carbon data, and that helps them to be able to kind of manage and map their requirements for decarbonising each year in order to reach their target, depending what year they've set. And just thought maybe that might be quite useful to add as well.
Yes, that would, because I don't think we've linked to that at the moment. So I'll note that one down. Thank you very much, Cara. Nick.
Yeah, thanks. So I think we've already had a sort of discussion about the relationship between the Great Collaboration and what Herefordshire Council is doing. I suppose it's just how do we avoid confusion between, as you said, two websites that are independently arrived at but appear to be doing somewhat similar things, and how do we maximise the synergy between them and sort of just make sure that we the branding makes it clear to people what the differences might be and what the advantages of each might be.
Yeah, I think it's the Great Collaboration seems to be doing a lot more in terms of individuals, which is definitely something that we're not touching. So we highlight what the projects are, but the Great Collaboration is a much better way of looking at what individuals in your community doing and breaking it down and dealing with sort of the things that we outline in scope 3 but don't touch, whereas all of our tool and all of the things that we're trying to signpost people for are very much for parish councillors and not for the individuals within the community. So Beth. I was just going to come in on that, because the way that I see it working is that Stay Green kind of have filled a gap that we haven't. So if you imagine the Great Collaboration Toolkit being used effectively in a community and all that gorgeous data coming through to local councils and environment groups, they're going to look at that and then go, and now what? And I feel like through using Nick's and John's tool, they will be given, I guess, kind of like a step-by-step guide, really, a project management tool to talk them through some of the actions that they can take. And the actions that they can take can be based on what's necessary for their area, maybe based on the LGA or the Impact Tools carbon calculator. But it's also a bit more democratic in so much as it's based on what the local population have an interest in and a desire to do and energy to do as well. So I think that both of those things are important. You know, it's important to reduce our carbon emissions, obviously, but we have to do it with the community on board. This is very much not, it's not about telling people what to do. It's about working together. And I think that Nick's project plans there can hopefully take out a lot of the legwork.
So it might be good, Beth, if we could capture that up front somewhere, just to say how the two dovetail together. Because I think at first sight, if you didn't look in detail, you might think essentially they're doing the same thing, and I think you're right, they're not. But so it's how we just present that to avoid confusion and maximise the synergy.
Yeah, I agree, Nick. I see it very much like a circular journey that you guys have just kind of finished for us. Let's let them get their website up first, shall we?
Yeah, I think it's again, something we've found is that there's a lot of re-promotion that goes on within these things, haven't we? That the more people that we've both spoken to, they want to recommend to people what you're doing, and similarly you want to send them back to the people that have recommended them to you. And whilst there are a lot of different things going on, they're all slightly different, which works well, certainly as far as the funders are concerned. Nick Sherwood, next Nick, sorry.
Hi, forgive me if I've maybe been a little bit slow on the uptake or missed something, but this question sort of applies to both the Great Collaboration and Stay Green, I think. I'm always really interested whenever we're looking at online tools for doing things and how that's actually going to facilitate peer-to-peer working, whether that's councillors engaging with councillors or individuals, you know, parishioners, or however you want to construct it. And I mean, clearly flow of data is always got its upside and its downside, because it can very easily become dead data. So what are the mechanisms, if there are any mechanisms, for sort of actually making cumulative knowledge of who's good at what, and, you know, skills, experience, how to do this, that, whether it's air source heat or whatever it happens to be, you know, how are you going to capture that in a way that stays live and fresh and actually enables the people to sort of engage usefully, but also maybe to spread the word that this is a useful engagement tool because it is alive and it is fresh and it offers answers to problems as they arise.
Do you want me to go first, Nick, or do you want to?
You go first.
So thinking about it from a community perspective, I think that in order to keep it alive and fresh in terms of the content and the information, especially that's what's happening locally, that's where having a person, a point of contact in order, you know, that's all you need for each council area to keep it alive and fresh, as you say. So that's in terms of the content. I'm trying to break down the questions. I feel like there's a few in there. In terms of peer-to-peer working in communities, I think that this is one of the Great Collaborations, a tool that brings people out of the woodwork, people you wouldn't have had those conversations with. We don't have a mechanism for recording, you know, who knows about heat source pumps, who knows about this, who know, you know, where people's skills lie. We don't have a mechanism for that. That's very much something that we are hoping would happen more organically. Bringing people together through the launch events, be it through social media, it feels like if there's a common ground, a common project for a whole community to get behind, then those sorts of things arrive, hopefully just out of conversations. And that's what makes it enjoyable, I think, Nick. I mean, maybe it's a bit old fashioned, who knows, but we haven't got a mechanism for recording people's skills or anything. Does that help on the community side of things a bit?
Yeah, I mean, I just think there are any number of ways of engaging people. I don't have a problem with people chatting about things informally, that's fine. But I mean, it's also a case of trying to catch resources as they accumulate in a way that is not you know, it's not a dead end for people, because data is always time dependent, isn't it? You know, what's relevant this year becomes irrelevant next year.
Yeah. And I think that's why making it a regular agenda item on full council meetings and reviewing it annually at least. I mean, full council obviously is a couple of, you know, 4 times a year, whatever. So I think that's where it's really important to go back over these actions and to review what you've done and what still needs to be done. And I think that that's something where people, in my experience anyway, local councils who have declared a climate emergency kind of go, okay, that's done now, put it to one side. And this is very much about continually going through the data, talking about the conversations that you've had with your local community and acting.
Yeah, and from a Stay Green perspective, I think we've based all of the actions that we found on best practice. And we've been in conversation with Carbon Copy, who are great. If you don't know them, I've just sent the link through to the chat, who are effectively collecting case studies of environmental, climate, biodiversity, whatever word you want to use, action from across the country, from organisations, from schools, universities, local councils, all of these kind of groups. And that is a live, ongoing resource. And we have a connection with them, and we have permission to use those case studies on our website, which means that, you know, when those are updated, they'll be linked into the actions which we're suggesting. And hopefully it becomes an iterative process whereby people will sign up to Stay Green. They'll go through the project management system, they'll complete an action, then that will send a template through to Carbon Copy. Then that template is available for other councillors to go on and see how that was done. And so that's one of the ways we're trying to think about creating this virtuous circle of action. And obviously the great collaboration is also part of that, because if you don't have community members pushing councillors through their own actions, then none of this happens. So it all works. There are lots of organisations kind of completing different pieces of the puzzle. And so we're just trying to fill a gap which might have been left. I hope that answers that question.
Sounds good.
There's something from Tony in the chat, which I can read out because I think both you, Beth, and Nick are better placed to answer this than I am. So maybe that's where we can just going to take over facilitation for a second. But Tony says, in my experience of parish council, people don't tend to engage much with them until there's a problem or an issue. So it's really important that people who are more active really engage and offer to lead environment subgroups of their parish council. Just asking them to declare and then engage is not enough. We need a lot more grassroots action to drive these actions forward.
That's essentially the great collaboration is a mechanism to enable that to happen. And Tony's nodding there. I think, yeah, she's completely right. I've been to so many full council meetings, and occasionally there might be something about traffic, or dog poo is always a popular one, footpaths. But a lot of people really care about this stuff. And in some cases, people were there. They actually bothered to attend the local council meeting. And where are they now? And I think, COVID kind of slowed momentum for some of those people. And I feel like the great collaboration is an opportunity to start those conversations again, and then Stay Green will give those environment groups and local councillors the tools that they need to take meaningful action.
Yeah, I think also the people who are on parish councils are people who know a lot of people in the local community. And when we set up our sustainability working group, we were able to collar a few people in the local community that we knew who would be interested in helping. And then at the annual parish meeting, we've managed to get some more. And then the people that we've got on know people, and we've got them involved. And I think it can be very difficult to start, but once you find people who are interested, they know other people who are interested. And people are scared of taking on a big project, but if you give them a little bit to do, and that goes well and they enjoy it and you support them, then they want to take on more, we've found, which hopefully is the experience that others have too.
I think Lewis has got a question as well there.
Yes, forgive me if both of you cover this in your toolkits, because I did put my glasses on, but I didn't quite catch everything that was there. One of the big issues with green is that we overlook the embodied carbon. For example, solar panels being sent from Norway or from halfway across the world, and defeats the purpose of exactly what you're trying to do with the actual installation, because even electric vehicles, people are talking about anything between 50 and 75,000 miles to even offset the embodied carbon in the energy it's used to manufacture it and the resources that are used. I didn't quite see that in either toolkits. I'm not saying it isn't there, but one of my concerns every time I'm having this discussion about how we encourage green initiatives, how we encourage greater sustainability, is where some of these, shall we say, supplies are coming from, and whether, when you talk about retrofitting, whether a complete redesign is actually worse than actually trying to cobble together some sort of improvement in terms of saying a house retrofit. So do both your toolkits cover, and it's a very difficult subject even for parish councillors, for town councillors, for anyone, this idea of embodied carbon, because I think that's one of the great areas that's overlooked in all of this, and maybe one of the reasons why we will not actually achieve net zero. I'll just leave that with that thought, but it may already be included. I don't know.
Yeah, it's something that we've tried to deal with, and it's something we're finding a lot of the university as well, with the university's estate, that again, just to give an example with buildings, that if the university wants to become net zero, we've essentially got 3 categories of buildings. We've got those that are net zero compatible at the moment, those that aren't at the moment and need an upgrade, and those that are going to have to be knocked down because there's no way that either physically or economically we can get them to net zero with the university's resources and the other things that we have to deliver. And it's something that we're trying to highlight in the projects that we've produced on buildings and on various other things. But again, it's something that's hard to deal with as a standalone project, looking at embodied carbon. And it's something that has to really feature in everything as one of the things to look out for. So I'd expect it to crop up in our things to look out for repeatedly.
Yeah, I also think, just to jump in quickly, it's worth saying that, you know, a lot of our actions are obviously carbon centric and carbon focused, and they're mitigation based, but you know, a lot of the actions we have in our toolkit are adaptation based, and a lot of them are social community projects. They're biodiversity focused. They're not ones which are intrinsically immediately focused on carbon and don't necessarily involve the kind of infrastructure that you're talking about, because I think, as both Beth and Nick mentioned earlier, there are a lot of easy wins that can be made which aren't necessarily carbon centered in that way, don't require that kind of technocratic approach, which obviously some larger scale projects do, but it's not always the answer. But it's definitely something we've considered. It's a difficult one to factor in. Beth, go on.
Yeah, I just want to follow on from that and say that we're also very aware of embedded energy and carbon. And actually, when we were writing the actions, they went through quite a rigorous process. And the Centre for Alternative Technology, the advisors there, looked through what we've done, and so I do think that in terms of having best practice and consulting with people who really know their stuff, that's about as rigorous as you can get, really, when it comes to covering that sort of thing. But we have gone through that process, and I know that you guys at Stay Green are also using best practice examples from, you know, established organisations. It's not just a bunch of volunteers doing that side.
Mervyn?
Yeah, I'll just unmute. There we are. I'll put the video on as well, and you can see what you're looking at.
Excellent. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you very much for the presentation, for both you, Beth, and yourself. I find it very interesting on 2 counts. One, I'm a district councillor, and I'm also chairman of a very small parish council. There's only 450 people that live in the village where I live. So I see this from both sides. The council that I'm a district councillor for is North Kesteven District Council. And we were the first council in Lincolnshire to declare a climate emergency. And we take this very, very seriously, the whole climate action, and the council puts a lot of money into resources for climate action. One of the issues that you have for residents of the district, of the country, if you like, there's only a limited amount of things that they can do to help reduce their carbon footprint. I did an online calculator for myself, and my carbon footprint came out at 8 tons of CO2. And nearly 50% of that was my heating, because I live in a rural area where I have to have oil. And there's a huge carbon footprint associated with that. So a lot of these things are outside of our control locally as individuals. What we should be doing, this is what I'm hoping with this, as individuals, we should be lobbying our councillors, our MPs, for the actions that we require. That's what we should be doing. At the local level, the things that I'm interested in, and we're trying to set up locally with groups of parish councils, is on the biodiversity, because I have a big thing in terms of biodiversity, because we're losing biodiversity at an alarming rate. I know we've got the Environment Bill that's just been published that's trying in some measures to correct that. And here we have a policy in central Lincolnshire that when already that we encourage housing developments that are made to be sustainable. We're looking for biodiversity increase ahead of the Environment Act requirement. In this particular village, when lockdown came, none of the footpaths were cut. Everybody said, "Isn't it wonderful? Look at all the wildflowers." That unfortunately almost caused World War III when lockdown ended, because you've got 50% of the population that love the rewilding and thinks it's great. And you've got a lot of people who I will say are probably in the 50 plus age group that want it all neat and trimmed and tidy. And because where I live here in Lincolnshire, they think it's green, because everywhere you look, it's green fields, notwithstanding the fact that it's a biological, biodiversity desert. So the thing that I'm interested in, I've had a look at both of your websites. The thing that I'm interested in here is the toolkits that gives small parish councils like mine the wherewithal to communicate with their residents, to get them involved with small biodiversity projects. I mean, what we're hoping to do here next year is to encourage people and give them wildflower seeds to plant and encourage little biodiversity projects like that. They're the real wins, I think, locally. In terms of retrofitting houses, here in North Kesteven, we own something like about 4,000 council houses. That's £80 million to retrofit, to bring them up to a good quality standard. All the houses that the council builds at the moment are all to passive house. We've taken that step, but to retrofit, to bring them up there, it's a huge problem. And I think it was Louis was talking about embedded carbon. I don't think we should get bogged down too much in terms of the embedded carbon. Yes, everything has a cost. Whatever you do, there's a cost. There's nothing free in this life. You have to be very careful, I think, in what you promote, and think about the actions at the other side of the world for your green policy here. And that's a difficult thing to get through to residents. We have to educate, I think. So what I've looked at on the Green Collaboration website, it's a nice toolkit for me and my parish council to help educate the residents here, and then spread that through a network of councils for people to think about what they do. Do they really need to buy the new pair of shoes? Don't buy everything that's plastic covered and stuff. That, I think, is where the real wins come in, is that education. And that's what I looked at that website and I thought that's a useful toolkit for small parish councils. And that's,
sorry, do you know, Mervyn, that's really interesting, because a lot of people who are involved in the Herefordshire Green Network are like, well, I know this stuff, but you know what? A lot of people really, really don't. And that's why you talked about lobbying. So under the Use Your Voice section, communicating with your local councillors is one of the actions. But you're right, what's the point unless people know what to communicate? That's quite a big gap there. And you spoke about the wins there in terms of biodiversity and the wildfire meadows and things like that. And, you know, the Great Collaboration's actions also encourage biodiversity as well as carbon cutting within them. So that's definitely something that we've tried to do. And I'd really, before it gets lost, I'd love to just read you from Mary. I think this is just so hopeful, who's just put a little note in the chat here. She says, and I think this links into what you were saying, Mervyn, about getting people in the community on board. We had around 60 people to our launch of the environment group Great Collaboration in Urdisland, a tiny parish, and we had 25 to a fascinating talk about trees and hedges last night. I would normally get 1 or 2 to a parish meeting. So even a small parish can get good engagement. The trick we have found is not to be too gloomy about it all. And I think that's where biodiversity really is a very hopeful and lovely thing to see immediate effects of. And also find topics they want to know more about rather than being told that they must do an abstract topic. So that's really, Mary, what we've tried to do with the Great Collaboration. Like I said before, these are practical tips. It's not finger pointing.
Yeah, I
jumped in.
Yeah, no, sorry, I'm just reading in the comments where Nick said about community and energy projects. That's a very emotive subject in terms of the various green energy technology, and I say green in inverted commas, whether it be wind, whatever. We have 2 miles from me 1,000 acres of farmland about to be developed for 400 megawatts. I think it's a megawatt. Yeah, megawatt solar farm. And there are any amount of these going across Lincolnshire. You then get into the debate about nuclear, and it spirals, and everybody has their own pet thing about that. I think the key thing for most of this, we have to reduce. That's the key thing with all of this, is reduce, reuse. I've been brought up in a throwaway society where there's always tomorrow, and that's the big thing that we have to get through to people, particularly people.
Plus, it saves you money as well. So there's always, there's always another positive there. Nick, fancy you putting something controversial in the chat there. I'm a wee bit conscious of time because apparently I'm going to hang on the call a wee bit. But I think, Tony, you had your hand up, and Cara. I can't see any others, but perhaps we should try and get in the last few questions while we can before people start wanting to head off for a little glass of wine.
Beth, I just wanted to say it was interesting what Mary was saying about gloomy, because my experience locally is that actually I think that people feel very people are very anxious, and I think that actually sort of controlling their environment around them sort of makes them feel like they have an element of control over what's happening, because everything's coming at us so fast and furiously. So in our local parish, while everybody's gone, yes, let's join the great collaboration, they've then gone and cut the churchyard and cut every single tiny bit of grass sort of down, just because it's sort of out of control. And I think that there is it is difficult not to get down about what's happening in terms of biodiversity. I mean, still lots of people think that sort of climate breakdown is something that's happening somewhere else, you know, so but biodiversity is something that they can relate to more, but it's that balance of not actually getting too sort of down about it, and also there is a generation of people who like things to be incredibly tidy, and they are the ones who are the volunteers in our communities, and they are the ones who are the sort of church wardens and the people who offer to mow the grass, and so there is a kind of generational thing happening as well, which is quite difficult to breach.
Yeah, I agree, Tony. I'm totally butting in, Nick, so please feel free to talk over me. And Tony, I completely agree, but from my experience, action, as we all know, leads to hope, and it's taking part in those things that gives you hope and gives you, for the future. And things like the churchyard being cut, I mean, we're really lucky to have close links to the diocese and God's Acre, and there is wonderful work being done across the county and across the country, really, on that. So it will build momentum, definitely. These things are growing. It just takes a bit of time, doesn't it? Nick, did you want to say anything on that? And I think Cara's got a question.
No, I was just going to say I popped a little graph in which looks at the life cycle emissions of various different forms of electricity generation. So that includes how it's made, where it's made, what sort of land it's put on. Just as an interesting point of debate for afterwards, probably, rather than here. But yes, Cara.
Thanks. So I was just really going to follow on what Mervyn was saying. And so in South Somerset, the council declared, acknowledged, a climate and ecological emergency. So there was that kind of conjoined issue. We've set up an environment champion scheme, engaging with the town and parish councils and community groups. We've got that network to kind of bring together stories and examples of what communities are doing to be able to visit some examples. But as I kind of call the gateway drug, which probably isn't very good, as you say, is that thing around tree planting. So we've donated lots of trees to town and parish councils and communities to get them involved. And once you start doing physical stuff, to then have these sort of conversations. But I think that's why it's really important to bring in that sort of overarching sort of data around where the carbon emissions have come from. So if you really understand where the biggest impact is, and it is through energy use and it is through our transport, which is huge. And until we stop burning fossil fuels, basically we're screwed. So using those ways of engaging with nature, I think, is a really great way to start opening up these conversations, but bringing in that data is really important. So people can really see what it is that's going to make the biggest difference, and that planting trees feels great, And it does do a bit of carbon sequestration, but it's, you know, not going to have the biggest impact in turning things off and switching your energy away from fossil fuels and walking and cycling more and getting electric cars or shared transport where you can. So it's just putting it with perspective, really. But it's great to combine two. So I think, you know, maybe if we add in declare climate and ecological emergency, then it encompasses all of that as one.
Definitely, Cara, and actually here a lot of people have gone back and amended it so that it does say ecological emergency as well. I think it's about 8 o'clock. I can see David's got his hand up, so I'm going to say that that's the last question, and I'm going to stay on the call for a wee bit afterwards.
Yeah, this is not really a question. I grew up in the 60s, I was born in the 40s, so I went through the peace movement and all of that and all the climate stuff. 40 years ago, I was writing all kinds of poetry on climate and nature. We're presently in a mental health pandemic. Please be gentle with people. You know, you have to be careful that you're not blaming people for what's going on now, and because they're in a pretty bad place right now. So please be gentle. Thank you.
David, I could not agree with you more, and I hope that I have made it clear that it's not about finger pointing. It's very much about bringing people together and probably meeting people that you've never even met before and having lovely conversations with them while you're planting a tree. And then you can move, like Cara said, onto, like you said, a gateway drug. I quite like that. Move on to those that have a bigger impact. Claire, go on then, one more.
I just wanted, I've got two hats here, one being part of a parish environment group, but also part of HGN, and we've been discussing the possibility of trying to offer to the Great Collaboration projects, parish projects, some additional support to just manage that gentleness around dealing with this topic and supporting people to look after themselves well during the process of becoming volunteers so that they can sustain that voluntary activity beyond the first kind of 6 or 12 months of excitement and doing something. We haven't started that, but if anybody's interested, I can put my email, or you can get in touch with Beth, I'm sure, and we can have a conversation about how that might work for you in your parish and how we might be able to support you. We don't have any funding for it yet, but we're really interested in finding out what needs to be done and how we can support people.
But Claire has a plan, so I'm sure that you could talk through that in a bit more detail. David, it has very much crossed our minds. South Shropshire Climate. I'm just going to keep going, but if people do need to get off, it has gone 8. So thank you so much for coming. I think that was a really great turnout there. 42 people. I'm happy with that. Go on the websites, have a little look around, and hopefully, if you're not on the mailing list, email me, and I will make sure that you get all of our MailChimps and correspondence so you don't miss out on anything.
And just to say thank you very much to everybody for turning up and listening to what we're doing. And I think a very good point there, that we're doing this because it's about hope. We need something positive to do. Let's get started. This is just about helping people to do that. And hopefully it'll make us all feel better doing the right things.
Yeah, definitely, Nick, definitely.